Millionaire took a pizza girl to a gala, unaware he was escorting the guest of honor. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Griffin Hayes thought he knew what success looked like. Corner office, growing company, 50 loyal employees depending on his decisions every single day. But success means nothing when your entire world can crumble with one failed business meeting. When the most important invitation of his career arrives, Griffin faces an impossible choice. Find the perfect companion for the most exclusive gala in the city, or watch everything he has built disappear forever. Enter Valerie Bell, pizza delivery driver with secrets deeper than her uniform suggests. One desperate proposition, one night of pretending, one revelation that will change everything they thought they knew about success, sacrifice, and the courage to be authentically yourself. Sometimes, the most extraordinary love stories begin with the most ordinary moments. And sometimes, the person you hire to save your dreams becomes the one who shows you what dreams are really worth fighting for. Mr. Hayes, you have got to see this. Griffin Alexander Hayes looked up from the financial reports scattered across his mahogany desk, his hazel eyes reflecting the concern in his assistant's voice. Marcus Chen stood in the doorway of Griffin's corner office, holding an elegant cream-colored envelope like it contained either salvation or destruction. "What is it, Marcus?" Griffin pushed back from his desk, the leather chair creaking softly in the quiet of the 32nd floor. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him, downtown Chicago glittered in the early evening light. But Griffin's attention was wholly focused on that envelope. Marcus stepped forward, his usually composed demeanor cracking slightly. "It's from Harrison Vance. Personal invitation to his private anniversary gala this Saturday night." Griffin's heart stopped. Harrison Vance, the name that had appeared in business journals for decades. The man who had built Vance Industries from a small manufacturing company into one of the most respected conglomerates in the Midwest. The man whose partnership could save Hayes Enterprises from the brutal competition threatening to crush Griffin's 7-year-old consulting firm. "You are absolutely certain this is legitimate?" Griffin took the envelope with hands that wanted to tremble but refused to show weakness, even in front of Marcus. Verified through 3 different sources. The invitation came through official channels, Mr. Hayes. "This is real." Griffin opened the envelope with surgical precision, reading the elegant script that invited him to an intimate evening celebrating excellence in American business. His mind raced through the implications. In 7 years of building Hayes Enterprises from a single-room startup into a 50-employee firm, he had never received recognition at this level. "Marcus, what do we know about these Vance events?" Marcus consulted his tablet, clearly having anticipated this question. "Extremely exclusive. Maybe 60 people total. Previous attendees include Fortune 500 CEOs, federal judges, university presidents. The guest list reads like a who's who of American leadership." Griffin felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. 50 employees. 50 families depending on Hayes Enterprises for their livelihood. The quarterly reports told a story Griffin did not want to acknowledge. Without a major partnership or acquisition, they would be forced to start laying people off by Christmas. "This could be everything we need," Griffin said quietly, more to himself than to Marcus. "Sir?" Griffin looked up, meeting Marcus's concerned gaze. "The Hartwell Group has been circling us like vultures, offering buyout packages to our best people. Johnson Manufacturing is underbidding us on every major contract. We need a partnership with someone who has the resources and reputation to help us compete." Marcus nodded grimly. They both knew the truth Griffin rarely spoke aloud. Hayes Enterprises was strong but small, profitable but vulnerable. In today's marketplace, that combination was increasingly dangerous. What about Rachel? Marcus asked. She would be perfect for an event like this. Griffin's expression darkened. Rachel Morrison, the elegant attorney he had been casually dating for 8 months, would indeed be the ideal companion for such an event. Beautiful, sophisticated, comfortable in elite circles. Unfortunately, Rachel's sister had a medical emergency in Seattle. She flew out this morning and will not be back until next week. Marcus frowned. The event is in 4 days, Mr. Hayes. Perhaps one of your other acquaintances. Griffin almost smiled at Marcus's diplomatic phrasing. The truth was, Griffin had no other acquaintances suitable for an event of this magnitude. His social circle consisted primarily of business associates, his weekly poker game with college friends, and the occasional dinner with clients. Romantic relationships had always taken a back seat to building the company. I need someone who can hold intelligent conversations with university presidents and federal judges, Griffin said, standing and walking to the window. Someone who understands business culture but would not be intimidated by extreme wealth. Someone who can... He paused, the weight of the situation settling fully upon him. Someone who can help me make the impression that saves this company. Marcus joined him at the window, following Griffin's gaze toward the bustling streets below. Maybe this is overthinking it, sir. You are brilliant at what you do. Your integrity and business acumen speak for themselves. Griffin appreciated the loyalty, but Marcus did not understand the reality of elite networking. These events are not just about business qualifications, Marcus. They are about fit. Cultural fit, social fit, whether people believe you belong in their world. The silence stretched between them as Griffin contemplated the magnitude of this opportunity. 7 years of 18-hour days, of reinvesting every profit back into the company, of building something meaningful from nothing. All of it could hinge on one evening, one conversation, one chance to prove that Hayes Enterprises deserved a seat at the table with the major players. "Sir," Marcus said gently, "you belong in any room you enter. You have built something remarkable here." Griffin turned back to his desk, where framed photographs showed Hayes Enterprises' evolution, the original tiny office, the first major client celebration, last year's company picnic, where 50 employees and their families had gathered for barbecue and games in Lincoln Park. Each photograph represented people who had trusted Griffin with their careers, their futures. Sarah in accounting just bought her first house with the bonus from the Morrison contract, Griffin said quietly. Tom in consulting services is finally able to afford his daughter's college tuition. These people believed in what we were building here, Marcus. They deserve a leader who can secure their futures. Marcus nodded, understanding the weight Griffin carried. So what do we do? Griffin looked again at the elegant invitation, at Harrison Vance's signature, authorizing entry into a world Griffin had spent his entire career working toward. We find a way to make Saturday night count, whatever it takes. The setting sun cast long shadows across Griffin's office as he contemplated the challenge ahead. Somewhere in this vast city was the right person to help him navigate the most important evening of his professional life. He just had to find her, and he had exactly 4 days to do it. Valerie Elizabeth Bell stepped out of her compact sedan, balancing 4 pizza boxes against her hip while checking the address on her phone screen. Hayes Enterprises, 32nd floor. The glass tower stretched upward into the Chicago evening, its windows reflecting the last golden light of sunset. Another late night for the corporate warriors, she murmured, pressing the elevator button with her elbow. The delivery uniform felt strange after months of wearing it, but every aspect of her leadership development program had purpose. Tonight, she was completing her final week as a pizza delivery driver for DeLuca's family restaurant. The elevator hummed smoothly upward, giving Valerie time to reflect on the past 4 years of structured experiences her father had designed. Manufacturing floor work had taught her how products actually got made. Customer service had shown her how clients experienced their companies. Retail management had revealed the complexity of daily operations. Each position had been authentic work, with real responsibilities and genuine paychecks. Pizza delivery teaches logistics, time management, and customer interaction under pressure. Her father had explained when she questioned this final assignment. Plus, you learn how different businesses operate after hours. The elevator doors opened onto a sophisticated lobby with the Hayes Enterprises logo, etched in brushed steel. Soft lighting and comfortable seating created an atmosphere of professional warmth. But what caught Valerie's attention were the employee recognition boards lining one wall. Photographs showed company celebrations, achievement awards, and community service projects. This was not just a workplace, it was a community. "Excuse me, I have a delivery for—" Valerie consulted her receipt. Marcus Chen, a well-dressed Asian man in his early 30s, approached from a corridor lined with glass-walled offices. "That would be me. Perfect timing." He gestured toward the active workspace behind him. "We have got a team pulling an all-nighter on the Morrison manufacturing proposal." Valerie followed Marcus through the office space, noting the energy despite the late hour. People clustered around whiteboards covered in strategic diagrams, their sleeves rolled up and their focus intense. This was not the desperate chaos of a failing company, but the determined effort of people who believed in their mission. "Your team works pretty late," Valerie observed, setting the pizza boxes on a conference table where laptops and documents competed for space. "We do what it takes," Marcus replied, then paused. "Actually, we do what our CEO inspires us to do. Griffin Hayes built this place on the principle that if you take care of your people, they will take care of the business." Valerie smiled. "Sounds like a good leader. The best I have ever worked for. Fair, ethical, incredibly smart, he genuinely cares about every person here." Marcus's expression grew concerned, "which is why this weekend is so important. Big presentation." Marcus glanced around, then lowered his voice. "The opportunity of a lifetime, actually. But it requires the right presentation." Before Valerie could ask what he meant, a voice called from across the office. "Marcus, did the food arrive? We need to fuel up for another 3 hours of work." Valerie turned toward the voice and found herself looking at a man who commanded attention without demanding it. Griffin Hayes was tall and lean, with the kind of confident posture that came from years of leadership responsibility. His dark hair showed slight dishevelment from running his fingers through it, and his hazel eyes held the intensity of someone accustomed to solving complex problems. "Mr. Hayes," Marcus called back, "this is Valerie from DeLuca's." Griffin approached with the easy stride of someone comfortable in his own space. "Thank you for the late delivery. I know it is past your usual hours." Valerie was struck by his immediate courtesy. Many clients treated delivery drivers as invisible, but Griffin made direct eye contact and spoke to her as an equal professional. "No problem at all. You look like you have got important work happening here." "We hope so." Griffin's smile was tired but genuine. "Every project we take on represents someone's trust in our abilities. We try to honor that. That is a good philosophy." Valerie found herself genuinely curious about this man and his company. "What kind of consulting do you do?" "Strategic business development, primarily for mid-sized manufacturers looking to expand or improve efficiency. We help family businesses scale up while maintaining their values." Valerie nodded, impressed despite herself. Preserving family business culture during growth is incredibly challenging. Most companies lose their identity when they scale. Griffin's eyebrows rose slightly. "Exactly. You understand business?" "I pick up things here and there." Valerie smiled, not entirely dishonestly. "Delivering to different companies. You hear about their challenges?" Marcus cleared his throat. Sir, perhaps we should let Valerie get back to her other deliveries. But Griffin seemed reluctant to end the conversation. Do you mind me asking, what do you think makes the difference between companies that maintain their culture and those that lose it? Valerie considered the question seriously. Leadership authenticity, I think. When executives genuinely care about their people rather than just their profits, that authenticity becomes part of the company DNA. But when leaders are just performing the role of caring, employees sense the difference. Griffin stared at her for a long moment. That is remarkably insightful. Like I said, you hear things. Valerie glanced at her phone, noting she had 2 more deliveries before her shift ended. I should probably... Wait. Griffin's voice held sudden urgency. This might sound unusual, but do you have a moment to talk privately? Valerie felt a flicker of curiosity mixed with caution. About what? Griffin looked at Marcus, then back at Valerie. About an opportunity that might interest you, something that could be mutually beneficial. The way he said it, with careful professionalism and underlying desperation, made Valerie wonder what kind of opportunity a successful CEO might offer a pizza delivery driver at 8:30 on a Tuesday evening. I suppose I have a few minutes, she said. Griffin gestured toward his office. Excellent. Marcus, could you give us some privacy? As Valerie followed Griffin toward his corner office, she wondered what she was walking into. But something about this man's genuine respect for her opinion, combined with the obvious care he showed for his employees, made her curious enough to find out. Whatever Griffin Hayes was about to propose, Valerie suspected it would be unlike anything she had experienced in her carefully planned leadership development program. Griffin's corner office impressed Valerie despite her determination not to be impressed. The space balanced professional authority with personal warmth. Awards and certifications shared wall space with employee appreciation letters and photographs of company events. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago's skyline stretched into the evening darkness. Please have a seat, Griffin said, gesturing to one of 2 leather chairs positioned in front of his desk. He chose the other chair rather than positioning himself behind the desk, creating a sense of collaboration rather than hierarchy. This is a beautiful office, Valerie said, settling into the chair. Great view of the city. Thank you. I spend enough time here that it needed to feel welcoming. Griffin's hands moved restlessly, suggesting nervousness beneath his professional composure. I appreciate you taking a moment to talk. What I am about to discuss might sound unconventional. Valerie leaned back slightly, curious. I am listening. Griffin drew a deep breath. This Saturday evening, I have been invited to Harrison Vance's private anniversary gala. Do you know who Harrison Vance is? Vance Industries, manufacturing conglomerate, family-owned, excellent reputation for ethical business practices. Valerie kept her expression neutral despite the irony of the situation. Very exclusive networking events. Exactly. Griffin's eyes lit with surprise at her knowledge. This invitation represents the most significant business opportunity Hayes Enterprises has ever received, a chance to partner with someone who could help us compete with much larger firms. That sounds important. It is critical. Griffin stood and walked to the window, his reflection ghost-like against the city lights. Without a major partnership, we will be forced to start laying people off by Christmas. 50 families depend on this company, Valerie. 50 people who trusted me to build something sustainable. The weight in his voice made Valerie's chest tighten. This was not about personal ambition. It was about responsibility and genuine care for others. What does this have to do with me? Griffin turned back to face her. My usual companion for such events is unavailable due to a family emergency. I need someone sophisticated enough to navigate elite social circles, intelligent enough to hold conversations with business leaders and academics, and confident enough not to be intimidated by extreme wealth. Valerie felt a flutter of understanding. You are asking me to be your date to this gala. I am asking you to help me make the best possible impression at the most important business event of my career. Griffin's voice carried careful professionalism. I would compensate you generously for your time, of course. $1,000 for the evening, plus professional styling and appropriate attire. The sum was substantial, but what intrigued Valerie was not the money. This represented an unprecedented opportunity to observe high-level business networking from the inside, to see how deals were really made at the highest levels of corporate America. Her father had always emphasized that true leaders needed to understand every aspect of business, including the social dynamics that often determined success or failure. What exactly would this involve? She asked. Griffin returned to his chair, leaning forward with renewed energy. Arriving together, mingling with other guests, allowing people to assume we are romantically involved. Nothing inappropriate, he added quickly, just creating the impression of being an established couple. Why do you need to appear to have a girlfriend? Griffin's expression grew thoughtful. These events are as much social as business. People want to know who you are as a person, not just as a professional. Having a sophisticated companion suggests stability, good judgment, social competence. It indicates that other intelligent people choose to spend time with you. Valerie nodded slowly. Social proof. Exactly. Griffin seemed pleased by her understanding. You clearly have intelligence and poise. You are beautiful without being flashy, professional without being intimidating. You would fit perfectly in that environment. How do you know I would fit? Griffin smiled. Because in 5 minutes of conversation, you demonstrated better understanding of business culture than people I have known for years. Because you carry yourself with natural confidence, because you treated my employees with respect and showed genuine interest in what we do here. The compliments were gratifying, but Valerie found herself more interested in Griffin's character assessment. What makes you think I would not embarrass you? Honestly, my instincts. I've built a successful company by reading people accurately, and everything about you suggests someone who can handle herself in any situation. Valerie studied Griffin's face, noting the sincerity in his expression. This is really that important to your company. It could save us. Harrison Vance is exactly the kind of partner we need. Established, ethical, interested in supporting growth rather than just acquiring assets. But I only get one chance to make that impression. The vulnerability in his admission touched something in Valerie's heart. Here was a leader genuinely concerned about his people's welfare, humble enough to ask for help, and honest about the stakes involved. Her leadership development program had taught her many things, but perhaps most importantly, it had taught her to recognize authentic character. I would need to know more about what to expect, she said. The other guests, appropriate conversation topics, how you want to present our relationship. Griffin's relief was visible. Of course. We could meet tomorrow evening to discuss details. I would also arrange for professional styling, hair, makeup, appropriate gown for the event. And you would introduce me as your girlfriend, as my companion, someone I have been seeing in perhaps 6 months, long enough to be serious, but not so long that people would expect an engagement announcement. Valerie smiled despite herself. You have thought this through carefully. When 50 jobs are at stake, you think through every detail. The sincerity of that statement decided her. All right, Mr. Hayes, I will help you make a good impression at Harrison Vance's gala. Griffin's smile transformed his entire face. "Thank you, Valerie. Truly. You might be saving more than just my career." As they shook hands to seal their unusual agreement, Valerie wondered what she had just committed herself to. But something about Griffin Hayes inspired confidence. He was clearly a man of integrity, and his concern for his employees spoke to the kind of leadership she hoped to emulate someday. Little did she know that Saturday evening would reveal truths that would change both their lives forever. Thursday evening found Griffin and Valerie seated in a quiet corner booth at Rossetti's, an upscale Italian restaurant near Griffin's office. The choice of venue had been deliberate, sophisticated enough to match the tone they needed to establish, but intimate enough for detailed conversation without being overheard. Valerie studied the leather-bound folder Griffin had prepared, impressed despite herself by his thoroughness. Inside were photographs of prominent guests likely to attend, brief biographies of key business leaders, and even suggested conversation topics appropriate for different social situations. "You have researched this, like a military operation," she observed, turning a page that detailed the layout of the Vance estate where the gala would be held. Griffin looked up from his own notes, a slight flush coloring his cheeks. "I may have gone overboard, but this event represents 7 years of work building Hayes Enterprises. I cannot afford to miss any details." "Tell me about Harrison Vance himself. What do you know about him personally?" Griffin's expression grew more animated. "He is remarkable, actually. Built Vance Industries from a small manufacturing company he inherited into one of the most respected conglomerates in the Midwest. But he did it while maintaining family ownership and keeping the company values-driven rather than purely profit-focused. That is unusual in today's business climate. Exactly why I want to partner with him. Vance Industries has the resources to help us compete with larger firms, but they share our philosophy about treating employees well and maintaining ethical business practices." Valerie nodded approvingly. "Sounds like someone worth impressing." "What about his family?" "He is a widower. His wife Margaret died about 10 years ago. They had one daughter, but she keeps a very low profile. I've never seen her at public events." "Interesting. Some business families prefer to keep the next generation out of the spotlight until they are ready for full leadership responsibilities." Griffin paused in his review of notes. "You really do understand business culture. Where did you develop that knowledge?" Valerie had prepared for this question. "I have always been interested in how organizations work. I read business books, follow industry news, observe the companies I deliver to. You pick up patterns. Most people in service industries do not spend their free time studying corporate strategy. Most people do not have the opportunity to see inside as many different businesses as I do. It is like an informal education in organizational behavior." Griffin smiled at her response. "That is a fascinating perspective. What have you learned about Hayes Enterprises through your observations?" "That you have created something special. Your employees stay late, not because they have to, but because they believe in what you are building. That level of engagement does not happen by accident." The compliment seemed to affect Griffin more than expected. "Building that culture has been my highest priority. When people feel valued and see their work contributing to something meaningful, they give their best effort naturally. Not many leaders understand that principle. My parents taught me that business success without human decency is not real success at all. They both worked for companies that treated employees as disposable resources. I was determined to build something different." The mention of his parents carried emotional weight that made Valerie curious. "Are they proud of what you have accomplished?" Griffin's expression grew distant. They died in a car accident when I was 25, just as I was starting Hayes Enterprises, but I think they would approve of what we have built. I am so sorry for your loss. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was. But in some ways, losing them strengthened my resolve to create something lasting, something that would honor their values while providing security for other families. Valerie felt a deep respect for this man who had channeled personal tragedy into positive purpose. That is a beautiful way to honor their memory. Griffin looked at her with surprise. Thank you. Most people find it uncomfortable when I mention my parents. Grief and purpose are not uncomfortable topics if you approach them with respect. You have an unusual perspective on life, Valerie Bell. If only you knew, she thought. I believe everyone has interesting perspectives if you take time to really listen. Griffin closed his folder and leaned back in his chair. Speaking of listening, what questions do you have about Saturday evening? What concerns you most? Valerie considered carefully. Honestly, the possibility of saying something that undermines your goals. I want to help you succeed, but I do not want to accidentally damage your reputation. I appreciate that concern, but I have complete confidence in your social intelligence. Just be yourself, thoughtful, articulate, interested in others. Those qualities will serve us well. What if someone asks detailed questions about our relationship, how we met, specific shared experiences? Griffin pulled out a small notebook. I thought we could establish some basic facts. We met 8 months ago through mutual friends at a charity fundraiser for children's literacy. We discovered shared interests in business ethics, community service, and Italian cuisine. We have been seeing each other regularly since then, but keeping things relatively private. That sounds believable. What about more personal questions? Such as, what do I do for work? Where do I live? My family background? Griffin had clearly considered these issues. You are taking some time to explore different career options after completing your graduate studies. You are interested in organizational development but want to gain practical experience before committing to a specific path. Your family values privacy, so you prefer not to discuss them in detail. All technically true, Valerie noted with amusement. The best cover stories stay as close to truth as possible. They spent the next hour reviewing potential scenarios, discussing appropriate responses to various questions, and establishing the comfortable rapport that would make their relationship appear authentic. Griffin proved to be an excellent teacher, patient and thorough, without being condescending. As the evening wound down, Valerie found herself genuinely looking forward to Saturday night. Not just for the unique experience it would provide, but for the chance to help this decent man protect something he had built with integrity and purpose. One final question, she said, as Griffin walked her to her car. What happens after Saturday night? Do we pretend to break up gradually or have a dramatic split? Griffin laughed. I had not thought that far ahead. Let us see how Saturday goes first. As Valerie drove home, she reflected on the evening's conversation. Griffin Hayes was exactly the kind of leader she hoped to become, principled, thoughtful, genuinely concerned with the welfare of others. Helping him succeed felt like supporting something worthwhile. She had no idea that Saturday evening would reveal connections neither of them had anticipated, or that their carefully planned deception would become the foundation for something beautifully, surprisingly real. Saturday evening arrived with the crisp clarity that made Chicago autumns legendary. Valerie stood before the full-length mirror in her hotel suite, hardly recognizing the woman looking back at her. The professional styling team Griffin had arranged had transformed her from pizza delivery driver to elegant sophisticate with remarkable skill. The gown was a masterpiece of understated luxury, deep sapphire silk that complemented her auburn hair and brought out the green in her eyes. The cut was classic and flattering without being ostentatious, perfect for making a positive impression without overwhelming the room. Her hair had been styled in a sophisticated updo that showcased delicate diamond earrings, borrowed from the stylist's collection, and her makeup enhanced her natural beauty without creating an artificial mask. "You clean up pretty well, Valerie," she murmured to her reflection, then immediately corrected herself. Tonight, she was not just Valerie Bell, pizza delivery driver completing a leadership development program. Tonight, she was Valerie Bell, graduate student and Griffin Hayes' sophisticated companion. The irony of the situation struck her again. Here she was, preparing to help Griffin impress her own father by pretending to be someone other than Harrison Vance's daughter. If her father could see her now, he would probably be both amused and proud of her commitment to authentic experience. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Bell, your transportation has arrived." Valerie gathered her small clutch purse, containing only essential items and the background story she and Griffin had rehearsed, and made her way to the lobby. Through the glass doors, she could see a sleek black sedan waiting at the curb. Griffin emerged from the vehicle as she approached, and Valerie felt her breath catch slightly. If she had been transformed, Griffin Hayes had been elevated to an entirely different level. His tuxedo was clearly custom-tailored, fitting his athletic frame perfectly. His dark hair was expertly styled, and his usual professional confidence had expanded into something approaching genuine sophistication. "Valerie." His voice held wonder as he took her hand to help her into the sedan. "You look absolutely stunning. You are not looking too shabby yourself, Mr. Hayes." She settled into the leather seat beside him, noting how the intimate space of the sedan seemed to intensify his presence. "Griffin," he corrected gently. "Tonight, we are Griffin and Valerie, remember?" "Griffin," she agreed, testing the sound of his name. "Are you ready for this?" Griffin's hand moved to his jacket pocket, checking for what she assumed was his business card or perhaps notes about key attendees. "As ready as I can be. What about you? Any last-minute concerns?" "Just one. What if I like playing your girlfriend too much?" The words slipped out before Valerie could stop them, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. Griffin turned to look at her directly, his hazel eyes searching her face. "Would that be such a terrible thing?" he asked quietly. The question hung between them as the sedan glided through Chicago's evening traffic toward the exclusive North Shore suburb where Harrison Vance's estate waited. Valerie found herself acutely aware of Griffin's proximity, the way his cologne mixed with the leather scent of the sedan, the confident way he carried himself, even while acknowledging his nervousness about the evening ahead. "Tell me what success looks like tonight," she said, deflecting from the personal moment. "What needs to happen for you to consider this evening worthwhile?" Griffin's expression grew thoughtful. "Honestly, a genuine conversation with Harrison Vance. Something that goes beyond polite small talk and allows him to see that Hayes Enterprises would be a valuable partner, not just another company looking for investment. What makes you different from other companies that might approach him? We share values. We both believe business success should strengthen communities, not exploit them. We both think long-term relationships matter more than short-term profits. We both understand that treating employees well is not just ethical, it is smart business." Valerie nodded approvingly. "Those are excellent foundations for partnership. The challenge is creating an opportunity for him to discover those shared values in a social setting where business talk needs to feel natural rather than forced." "Leave that to me," Valerie said with more confidence than she felt. "I am good at steering conversations toward topics that matter." Griffin smiled, and Valerie noticed how the expression softened his entire face. "I am beginning to think hiring you was the smartest business decision I have made all year." "Just wait until you get my bill," she replied, earning a laugh that eased some of the tension in the sedan. As they approached the gates of the Vance estate, Valerie felt a familiar flutter of anticipation mixed with affection. The sprawling grounds looked magnificent in the evening light, with carefully designed landscaping leading up to the elegant mansion where she had grown up. Staff members in formal attire directed arriving vehicles, and Valerie could see other guests making their way toward the main entrance. "Last chance to change your mind," Griffin said softly. Valerie turned to meet his eyes. "Are you changing yours?" "Not a chance. Whatever happens tonight, I'm grateful you agreed to help me. Then let us go show Harrison Vance what Hayes Enterprises has to offer." As their sedan joined the procession of arriving guests, Valerie wondered how the evening would unfold. Her father was expecting to meet various business leaders and their companions. He had no idea that one of those companions was his own daughter, about to help a young entrepreneur make the most important impression of his career. The next few hours would test everything she had learned about business, relationships, and the courage to authentically represent someone else's dreams while keeping her own identity carefully hidden. But looking at Griffin's determined profile as he prepared to step into her father's world, Valerie felt certain that whatever happened, this evening would be unforgettable for both of them. The Vance estate embodied understated elegance on a grand scale. As Griffin and Valerie stepped from their sedan, they were greeted by sweeping gardens, illuminated with hundreds of small lights that created an almost magical atmosphere. The mansion itself rose majestically against the evening sky, its Georgian architecture speaking to generations of American success built on solid foundations. "This is incredible," Griffin murmured, offering Valerie his arm as they approached the main entrance. Valerie felt a familiar warmth looking at her childhood home, though she kept her expression appropriately impressed. Harrison Vance certainly knows how to create an atmosphere. A uniformed attendant guided them through mahogany doors into a foyer that took Griffin's breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over gathered guests who represented the pinnacle of American business achievement. Conversations hummed with the particular energy of people accustomed to making decisions that affected thousands of lives. "Remember," Valerie said quietly, "we have been together for 6 months. We met at a literacy fundraiser. You love my insights into organizational behavior, and I admire your commitment to ethical business practices." Griffin squeezed her hand gently. "And we are genuinely fond of each other. That part should not be difficult to fake," Valerie replied, surprised by her own honesty. They moved into the main reception area, where servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Griffin accepted 2 glasses, handing one to Valerie while scanning the room for familiar faces from his research. "There," he said quietly, nodding toward a distinguished gentleman with silver hair commanding attention near the marble fireplace. "Harrison Vance." Valerie followed his gaze to her father, who was engaged in animated conversation with a woman she recognized as the president of a major university. Harrison Vance looked exactly as he always did at these events, confident, approachable, genuinely interested in the people around him. "He looks like someone worth impressing," she said neutrally. "The question is how to approach him naturally. I cannot just walk up and start pitching Hayes Enterprises." Valerie studied the room dynamics with the trained eye of someone who had attended dozens of similar events. "See the couple he was talking to earlier? They are moving toward the garden terrace. In about 5 minutes, he will probably step outside for some fresh air. That would be a perfect opportunity for a casual encounter." Griffin looked at her with amazement. "How could you possibly know that?" "Body language. He has been inside for at least an hour, based on how relaxed he looks with different groups. Successful executives his age usually step outside periodically at these events to reset their energy." That is remarkably observant. I pay attention to patterns. Valerie sipped her champagne, noting other guests she recognized from previous family events. While we wait, let me introduce us to some other people. Building multiple connections makes you more memorable. For the next 20 minutes, Valerie demonstrated social skills that left Griffin increasingly impressed. She guided conversations with subtle expertise, asking questions that revealed interesting information about their fellow guests while positioning Griffin as someone worth knowing better. Griffin Hayes, she would say warmly, has built one of the most employee-focused consulting firms in the Midwest. He actually measures success by how well his team members advance their own careers. Each introduction felt natural and authentic, highlighting Griffin's best qualities without obvious self-promotion. Valerie seemed to instinctively understand how to present him as both accomplished and approachable. "You are extraordinary at this," Griffin whispered during a brief moment alone. "I enjoy connecting people who should know each other. It is like solving puzzles where everyone benefits." "Where did you learn these skills?" Valerie smiled mysteriously. "You pick up things when you pay attention to human nature." As predicted, Harrison Vance began moving toward the garden terrace, pausing to speak with individual guests along the way. Valerie touched Griffin's arm lightly. "Show time. Remember, authentic interest in him as a person first, business second." They moved through the crowd with practiced casualness, timing their approach to intersect with Harrison's path just as he reached the terrace doors. "Excuse me," Valerie said with perfect timing. "Are you Harrison Vance?" Harrison turned with the gracious attention he showed all guests. "I am indeed. And you are?" "Valerie Bell. This is Griffin Hayes from Hayes Enterprises." She gestured to Griffin with obvious pride. "I have been hoping to meet you all evening. Your reputation for ethical business leadership is legendary." Harrison's eyes lit with genuine pleasure. "That is very kind of you to say, Miss Bell. Mr. Hayes, I am not familiar with your company, but the name suggests a family business." Griffin stepped forward with exactly the right combination of confidence and respect. "Actually, sir, I founded Hayes Enterprises 7 years ago. We specialize in helping family businesses scale up while maintaining their values, something I understand you accomplished brilliantly with Vance Industries." "Ah, a fellow entrepreneur." Harrison's interest was clearly engaged now. "What drew you to focus on family businesses specifically?" "I believe family businesses represent the best of American enterprise," Griffin replied sincerely. "They tend to think long-term, treat employees like extended family, and measure success by more than just quarterly profits. But they often struggle with growth challenges that larger consulting firms do not understand." Valerie watched her father's expression with hidden satisfaction. Griffin was saying exactly the kinds of things that resonated with Harrison's own business philosophy. "That is a fascinating perspective," Harrison said. "Most consultants seem focused on efficiency improvements and cost-cutting." "Cost-cutting is easy," Griffin replied. "Building sustainable growth while preserving company culture is the real challenge. Anyone can slash expenses, but it takes genuine leadership to grow revenues while keeping employees engaged." Harrison nodded approvingly. "Miss Bell, you have excellent taste in companions. Mr. Hayes clearly understands what matters in business." Valerie felt a flutter of genuine pride in Griffin's performance. "Griffin practices what he preaches. His employees are incredibly loyal because they know he genuinely cares about their success." "How large is Hayes Enterprises now?" Harrison asked. 50 employees, Griffin answered honestly. "Small enough that I know everyone personally, large enough to handle significant projects. We have been profitable every year since our 2nd year of operation." "Impressive. Many startups struggle to achieve consistent profitability." Harrison paused thoughtfully. What brings you to my little gathering tonight? Griffin exchanged a quick glance with Valerie, who nodded encouragingly. Honestly, sir, I was hoping for exactly this conversation. Hayes Enterprises has reached a point where we need strategic partnerships to compete with larger firms. I have enormous respect for how you have built Vance Industries, and I believe our values align perfectly. Rather than seeming put off by Griffin's directness, Harrison appeared more interested. What kind of partnership are you envisioning? Something that would allow both companies to offer clients more comprehensive services while maintaining our respective identities and cultures. Hayes Enterprises brings agility and specialized expertise in family business consulting. Vance Industries brings resources and established relationships. Valerie watched this exchange with growing admiration for both men. Her father was clearly evaluating Griffin not just as a potential business partner, but as a person worthy of trust. Griffin was presenting himself with exactly the right balance of ambition and humility. That sounds intriguing, Harrison said. Tell me, what do your employees think about potential partnerships? Have you discussed this with them? Griffin's face lit up. That is an excellent question, and it gets to the heart of why I want to partner with someone like you. I have been completely transparent with my team about our growth challenges. They understand that the right partnership could secure everyone's future while creating new opportunities for advancement. And if the partnership does not work out, then we continue building Hayes Enterprises one client at a time, one relationship at a time. My people know I will never sacrifice their welfare for quick growth. Harrison smiled with what Valerie recognized as genuine approval. Miss Bell, your friend has impressive integrity. One of the things I admire most about him, Valerie replied truthfully. Mr. Hayes, would you be interested in continuing this conversation in a more formal setting? Perhaps you could visit Vance Industries next week and meet some of my senior team. Griffin's eyes widened with barely contained excitement. I would be honored, sir. Excellent. I will have my assistant arrange something. Harrison extended his hand for a firm handshake. It has been a pleasure meeting you both. As Harrison moved away to greet other guests, Griffin turned to Valerie with an expression of wonder and gratitude. I cannot believe that just happened, he whispered. You were perfect, Valerie said, meaning every word. Authentic, respectful, focused on values rather than just profit. He sees exactly what I see in you. Griffin's eyes searched her face. What do you see in me, Valerie? The question caught her off guard with its quiet intensity. Standing in the garden of her childhood home, wearing borrowed jewelry and a designer gown, pretending to be someone she was not while helping this genuine man pursue his dreams. Valerie felt the lines between performance and reality beginning to blur. I see someone who builds things that matter, she said softly. Someone who cares more about his people than his profit margins. Someone worth believing in. Griffin stepped closer, and for a moment the sounds of the party faded into background noise. This evening has been perfect, but not because of the business connection. Griffin. I know this started as a business arrangement, but what I feel right now is not pretend. Valerie's heart raced as she realized her own feelings had evolved far beyond their original agreement. Griffin Hayes was everything she had hoped to find in a business partner and, unexpectedly, everything she had hoped to find in a man worth loving. Before she could respond, the sound of applause drew their attention back to the party. Through the terrace doors, they could see guests gathering in the main reception area. Looks like Harrison Vance is about to make a speech, Griffin observed. Valerie felt a sudden flutter of nervousness. Her father's anniversary speeches were always personal and heartfelt, often including references to family and future plans for Vance Industries. We should go listen, she said. though something in her voice suggested reluctance. As they rejoined the crowd, Valerie wondered what her father might say that could complicate the carefully constructed evening she and Griffin had created. She had no way of knowing that Harrison Vance's speech would reveal truths that would transform their relationship forever. The main reception area fell into expectant silence as Harrison Vance stepped onto a small platform near the grand staircase. Crystal glasses ceased their gentle clinking, conversations faded to whispers, and even the serving staff paused in their duties to listen. This was clearly a moment everyone had been anticipating. Griffin found himself standing with Valerie near the back of the gathered crowd, her hand resting lightly on his arm in a gesture that had become natural throughout the evening. The business connection with Harrison Vance exceeded his wildest expectations, but what struck him most profoundly was how perfectly Valerie had fit into this world of accomplished leaders and sophisticated conversation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harrison began, his voice carrying easily through the elegant space, "thank you for joining Margaret and me tonight as we celebrate another year of—" He paused, a brief shadow crossing his expression before he corrected himself with quiet dignity. "As I celebrate another year of Vance Industries' growth and the remarkable people who make our success possible." Griffin felt Valerie's grip on his arm tighten slightly. When he glanced at her, he noticed an unusual tension in her posture, as if she was preparing for something difficult. "This has been a year of reflection," Harrison continued, "about legacy, about family, about what we build that endures beyond our own lifetimes. 10 years ago, I lost my beloved wife, Margaret, and I promised her that I would ensure Vance Industries remained true to the values we established together." The room listened with respectful attention as Harrison spoke about the company's achievements over the past year. New partnerships that created jobs in struggling communities, environmental initiatives that exceeded regulatory requirements, and employee development programs that had earned national recognition. "But tonight," Harrison said, his tone shifting to something more personal, "I want to talk about something that brings me even greater pride than our business accomplishments. I want to talk about authentic leadership and the courage it takes to truly understand the people you hope to lead." Griffin found himself leaning forward, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. "Many of you know that I have a daughter," Harrison continued, "and that I have been preparing her to eventually take on significant responsibilities within our organization. What you may not know is the extraordinary length she has gone to earn that preparation through genuine experience rather than inherited privilege." Valerie's hand had gone completely still on Griffin's arm, and he noticed that her breathing had become very controlled. "For the past 4 years," Harrison said with obvious pride, "my daughter has worked her way through every level of business operations. She has spent time on manufacturing floors, in customer service departments, in retail management, and yes, even in food service delivery. Not as the boss's daughter observing from a distance, but as a regular employee earning regular wages and facing the same challenges as every other worker." Griffin felt a strange stirring of recognition, though he could not yet identify why Harrison's words were affecting him so strongly. "She chose this path because she believes that authentic leadership requires authentic understanding of every person in an organization. She wanted to know what it feels like to worry about making rent, to deal with difficult customers, to work late shifts for hourly wages, to be judged by your performance rather than your last name." The room was completely silent now, hanging on every word as Harrison's voice filled with paternal emotion. This summer, she completed her final assignment in this remarkable education, working as a pizza delivery driver for a local family restaurant. Not because she needed the money, but because she needed the experience of serving others, of being judged by her punctuality and professionalism rather than her pedigree. Griffin's world tilted suddenly as pieces began falling into place with devastating clarity. The business knowledge Valerie had demonstrated, her sophisticated understanding of social dynamics, her instinctive grasp of corporate culture, her mysterious confidence in predicting Harrison Vance's behavior patterns. Throughout this entire process, Harrison continued, she has maintained her commitment to authentic experience by using only her middle name professionally, ensuring that she was treated exactly like any other employee. She has earned every ounce of respect through her own merit. Griffin turned to look at Valerie, whose face had gone pale despite her professional composure. She met his eyes with an expression that mixed apology, vulnerability, and something that might have been hope. Tonight, I have the profound joy of introducing her not as my daughter making her society debut, but as a young leader who has earned her place in our organization through intelligence, integrity, and genuine care for others. Harrison extended his hand toward the crowd, and Griffin watched in stunned amazement as Valerie began moving through the guests toward the platform. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Miss Valerie Elizabeth Bell Vance, who will be joining Vance Industries as Vice President of Strategic Development, a position she has earned through years of dedication to understanding every aspect of how businesses truly serve their communities. The applause was thunderous, but Griffin barely heard it. He stood frozen in place, watching the woman he had hired as a pizza delivery driver to pose as his girlfriend gracefully accept recognition as the heir to one of the most successful business empires in the Midwest. Valerie reached the platform and accepted her father's embrace, but her eyes immediately sought Griffin's across the room. Even from a distance, he could see the complex emotions in her expression, pride in her accomplishment, gratitude for her father's recognition, and deep concern about how Griffin was processing this revelation. Valerie has asked me to keep her remarks brief tonight, Harrison said, his arm around his daughter's shoulders. But I hope you will all join her in celebrating not just this achievement, but the principle she represents. That true leadership is earned through service to others, not granted through accident of birth. Valerie stepped to the microphone, her poise remarkable given the magnitude of the moment. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the room. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you, Dad, for supporting my unconventional approach to leadership development. The past 4 years have taught me that every job has dignity, every worker deserves respect, and every leader has the responsibility to understand the lives of the people they hope to serve. She paused, her eyes finding Griffin's again across the room. I have learned that authenticity is not just a leadership quality, it is a human quality that creates the foundation for every meaningful relationship, whether professional or personal. And I have learned that sometimes the most important connections happen when we are brave enough to be exactly who we are, rather than who we think others expect us to be. As applause filled the room again, Griffin realized that his entire understanding of the evening, of Valerie, of their connection, of what had felt like growing love between them, required complete recalibration. The woman he had hired to help him impress Harrison Vance was Harrison Vance's daughter. The woman whose business insights had amazed him was a Harvard MBA with years of corporate experience. The woman he had fallen for while believing she was a pizza delivery driver exploring career options was actually the heiress to the very company he hoped to partner with. And as Valerie made her way back through the congratulating crowd toward him, Griffin faced the most important question of his life. Did any of what they had shared together represent her authentic feelings? Or had he simply been part of her education in understanding how different kinds of people responded to her? The answer to that question would determine not just his business future, but the future of his heart. The crowd gradually dispersed back into smaller conversation groups as the formal portion of the evening concluded, But Griffin remained exactly where he had been standing during Harrison's speech, still processing the magnitude of what he had just learned. Around him, guests resumed their networking and socializing, but their voices seemed to come from a great distance. Valerie approached him carefully, reading the complex emotions playing across his face. When she reached him, they stood in silence for a moment, the elegant party continuing around them while their private world underwent fundamental reconstruction. "Griffin," she said softly, "I need you to know. You are Harrison Vance's daughter." His voice was quiet, controlled, but she could hear the effort it took to maintain that control. "Yes. You have been his daughter the entire time we have known each other." "Yes." Griffin nodded slowly, his gaze moving past her to where Harrison Vance was accepting congratulations from other guests. The pizza delivery job was part of a leadership development program, the final phase of a 4-year program. "Yes." Valerie's voice remained steady, though Griffin could detect underlying tension. "Everything I told you about wanting to understand different aspects of business was true. I just did not tell you why it mattered so much to me personally." "And tonight? This entire evening?" Valerie took a breath before answering. "Tonight started exactly as we agreed. You needed a companion for an important business event, and I thought it would be valuable experience for me to observe high-level networking from the inside. But somewhere between your office on Tuesday night and standing here right now, it became much more complicated than that." Griffin looked at her directly for the first time since the revelation. "Complicated how?" "Because I stopped thinking about you as a client or as part of my education and started thinking about you as someone I genuinely care about. Because helping you succeed became important to me for personal reasons, not just professional ones." "How am I supposed to know what was real and what was performance, Valerie?" The question hit her like a physical blow, and Griffin saw pain flash across her face before she composed herself. "Every conversation we had about business ethics was real. Every moment I admired your integrity was real. Every time I was impressed by how much you care about your employees, that was completely authentic. And the personal moments, the chemistry between us." Valerie's composure finally cracked slightly. "Griffin, do you honestly think I'm such a skilled actress that I could fake the way I responded to you? Do you think I planned the way my heart raced when you stepped closer to me on the terrace tonight?" Griffin studied her face, looking for signs of deception but finding only vulnerability and what appeared to be genuine emotional distress. "I do not know what to think," he admitted. "An hour ago, I believed I was falling for a pizza delivery driver who saw something worthwhile in a struggling entrepreneur. Now I discover you are the daughter of the man I was trying to impress, with more business education and family connections than I could achieve in a lifetime. My education and my family connections do not change who I am as a person. Do they not? You have never had to worry about making payroll or keeping 50 people employed. You have never faced the possibility of losing everything you have built because you could not compete with larger firms." Valerie straightened, and Griffin caught a glimpse of the steel that would serve her well in corporate leadership. "You are right that I have never faced those specific challenges, but I have spent 4 years working jobs where I was paid hourly wages and could be fired at any time. I have worried about making rent and dealing with difficult customers and proving myself through performance rather than connections. By choice, you always knew you had a safety net. Yes, I had a safety net, but I chose not to use it. I chose to experience what it felt like to depend on my own efforts, my own competence, my own ability to earn respect." Griffin turned away, looking out through the terrace doors at the illuminated gardens. "Why did you not tell me who you were after we started working together? Surely you realized the deception would become increasingly complicated. Because I was not ready for this conversation to end. Her honesty surprised him. When he turned back, he saw that she had moved closer, close enough that he could see unshed tears in her eyes. What conversation? The one where you discover that I am not who you thought I was, and decide that everything between us was based on false pretenses. Her voice wavered slightly. The conversation where you conclude that someone like me could never really understand someone like you, and walk away. Griffin felt his anger begin to dissolve, replaced by confusion and an emotion he was not ready to name. Valerie, I know this looks terrible. I know it seems like I deceived you deliberately, but I need you to understand that when I agreed to help you Tuesday night, it was because I saw something in you that impressed me. Your integrity, your genuine concern for your employees, your willingness to ask for help when something mattered to you. And now I know that my first impressions were not just correct, they were incomplete. You are even more remarkable than I initially realized. Griffin searched her face, looking for any sign of insincerity. How do I know this is not just more performance? How do I know you are not saying what you think I need to hear? Valerie stepped even closer, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her green eyes. Because if this were performance, I would be emphasizing how much my family connections could help Hayes Enterprises. I would be talking about the resources Vance Industries could provide, the doors we could open for you. Instead, I am standing here terrified that you are going to decide I am not worth the complications my identity creates. The vulnerability in her admission reached something deep in Griffin's chest. Around them, the party continued with its elegant conversations and networking opportunities, but their focus had narrowed to this single moment of truth between them. Griffin, she said quietly, I cannot change who my father is or what advantages that has given me, but I can promise you that every moment we have shared, every conversation we have had, every feeling I have developed for you, all of that was based on who you are, not what you could do for me professionally. Griffin looked into her eyes and made a decision that would determine the course of both their futures. I believe you, he said simply. The relief that washed over Valerie's face was so profound that Griffin realized just how frightened she had been of losing whatever was developing between them. But we need to figure out how to move forward from here, he continued, because everything has changed, whether we want it to or not. Everything. Griffin reached out and took her hand, noting how perfectly it fit in his. Well, maybe not everything. They found themselves in Harrison's private study 20 minutes later, having extracted themselves from the party with polite excuses about needing a quiet place to talk. The room reflected its owner's personality, elegant but comfortable, with leather-bound books lining the walls and family photographs occupying places of honor on the mahogany desk. Valerie had kicked off her formal shoes and curled into one of the leather chairs, her sophisticated gown pooling around her in a way that somehow made her seem more approachable rather than less. Griffin sat across from her, his bow tie loosened and his formal jacket draped over the chair back. So, Griffin said, breaking the contemplative silence that had settled between them, Harvard MBA. Harvard MBA, Valerie confirmed with a slight smile. Graduated summa cum laude, if we are putting all our cards on the table. Business strategy specialization. Organizational behavior and family business dynamics. Actually, my thesis was on maintaining company culture during periods of rapid growth. Griffin laughed despite himself. Of course it was. No wonder you understood exactly what Hayes Enterprises was trying to accomplish. I understood it because you explained it clearly and passionately. My education gave me the framework to appreciate your approach, but you gave me the specific vision. How much of our conversation tonight with your father was choreographed? Valerie considered the question seriously. None of it was choreographed, but I knew it would go well because I know both of you. I know that Dad values integrity and authentic leadership above everything else. I know that you embody those qualities naturally. I just created the opportunity for him to see what I saw, which was someone who has built something meaningful without compromising his values, someone who measures success by the welfare of his people rather than just profit margins, someone who... She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully, someone who would fit perfectly into our family's approach to business. Griffin caught the significance of her phrasing. Our family's approach? Dad has been looking for the right person to partner with for years, Griffin. Someone who shares our values but brings different strengths and perspectives. What happened tonight was not just you impressing him. It was him recognizing exactly what he has been searching for. And what have you been searching for? The question was quiet, personal, completely separate from business considerations. Valerie met his eyes directly. Someone who would see value in who I am rather than what I represent. Someone who would respect my intelligence and my efforts to earn my own place in the world. Someone who would... She stopped, seeming to gather courage. Someone who would fall for Valerie Bell before they knew about Valerie Bell Vance. Griffin felt something shift in his chest. Is that what you think happened? I hope that is what happened. Because that is certainly what happened for me. What do you mean? Valerie uncurled from her chair and moved to the window, looking out at the gardens where they had shared their first authentic moment earlier in the evening. I mean that when you asked me to help you Tuesday night, I agreed because it seemed like interesting experience. But by Thursday, when we were having dinner and you were telling me about your parents and your commitment to building something meaningful, I was agreeing because I wanted to spend more time with you. And tonight? Tonight I realized I was not just helping you make a good impression on a potential business partner. I was helping you make a good impression on my father because I wanted him to see what I see in you. Griffin joined her at the window, standing close enough to catch the subtle scent of her perfume mixed with something uniquely her. What do you see in me, Valerie? She turned to face him, and Griffin was struck again by how the formal elegance of the evening had not diminished her natural beauty, but rather highlighted it. I see someone who built a company based on principles rather than just profit. I see someone who genuinely loves his work because it allows him to help others succeed. I see someone who was brave enough to ask for help when something mattered to him, and gracious enough to treat a pizza delivery driver with the same respect he would show a CEO. You were never just a pizza delivery driver, but you did not know that. You treated me with respect and kindness because that is who you are, not because of who you thought I might be. Griffin reached out and touched her face gently, his thumb tracing the line of her cheek. And I see someone who chose to earn her place in the world rather than simply inherit it, someone who is brilliant and accomplished but never condescending. Someone who helped me achieve the most important business breakthrough of my career and made me care more about her opinion than about the business implications. Griffin. Someone I was falling in love with before I knew her last name, and someone I'm falling in love with even more now that I understand how extraordinary she really is. The words hung in the air between them, representing a choice point that would determine whether their story continued or ended with tonight's revelations. Are you saying what I think you are saying? Valerie asked softly. I am saying that discovering you are Harrison Vance's daughter does not change how I feel about you. It just makes me realize how remarkable it is that someone with your advantages chose to spend her time helping someone with mine. Valerie stepped closer, close enough that Griffin could feel the warmth of her presence. And I am saying that meeting Griffin Hayes, the entrepreneur, was impressive, but knowing Griffin Hayes, the man, is something entirely different. What happens now? Now we figure out how to build something real together, both personally and professionally. Griffin smiled at the perfect integration of both aspects of their connection. I think I would like that very much, even though it means your potential business partner is also your girlfriend's father. Especially because it means that, Griffin replied, pulling her closer. Though I think we should probably discuss how to handle the professional complexities tomorrow, Valerie said firmly. Tonight, I just want to celebrate the fact that you did not run away when you discovered who I really am. I could never run away from you, Valerie Bell Vance. You are exactly what I did not know I was looking for. As Griffin leaned down to kiss her, both of them knew that their story was just beginning. What had started as a business arrangement had evolved into something neither of them had expected, a partnership that promised to transform both their personal and professional futures in ways they were only beginning to imagine. 1 month later, Griffin sat in the conference room at Vance Industries, reviewing merger documents that represented the culmination of everything he had worked toward for 7 years. Across the polished table, Harrison Vance's senior leadership team discussed integration strategies that would preserve both companies' cultures while creating new opportunities for growth. But Griffin's attention kept drifting to the woman seated at the head of the table, leading the discussion with the same natural competence she had demonstrated that first night in his office. Valerie had officially joined Vance Industries as Vice President of Strategic Development, and watching her in action confirmed everything Griffin had sensed about her leadership potential. The key to successful integration, Valerie was saying to the assembled executives, lies in maintaining what makes each organization strong while creating synergies that benefit everyone involved. Griffin's team brings agility and specialized expertise that will enhance our service offerings, while our resources and established relationships will help Hayes enterprises compete more effectively in larger markets. Marcus Chen, who had joined them for the integration planning, nodded approvingly. Our employees are excited about the possibilities. The opportunity to work on larger projects while maintaining our company culture feels like the best of both worlds. That is exactly what we want to achieve, Harrison said from his position at the far end of the table. Growth that strengthens rather than dilutes what makes both companies special. Griffin marveled at how smoothly the business integration was proceeding. What could have been a complicated acquisition had evolved into something much more collaborative, a true partnership between organizations that shared fundamental values about how business should serve both employees and communities. Griffin, Valerie said, pulling his attention back to the immediate discussion, do you want to walk everyone through the client transition timeline? Absolutely. Griffin stood and moved to the whiteboard where he had outlined the 6-month plan. We have identified 3 categories of existing clients: those who would benefit from Vance Industries' additional resources, those who prefer Hayes Enterprises' boutique approach, and those who need services that require both companies working together. As he detailed the transition strategy, Griffin felt the satisfaction that came from solving complex problems in ways that benefited everyone involved. The merger would secure his employees' futures while creating new opportunities for professional growth. Hayes Enterprises would maintain its identity while gaining the resources needed to compete in larger markets. Any concerns about maintaining client relationships during the transition? Asked Sarah Morrison, Vance Industries' Chief Operating Officer. Actually, Griffin replied, our preliminary conversations with key clients have been overwhelmingly positive. They appreciate that we are growing through partnership rather than acquisition, and they are excited about having access to expanded capabilities. That speaks to the strength of the relationships you have built, Harrison observed approvingly. The meeting continued for another hour, covering everything from integrated technology systems to combined employee development programs. When they finally concluded, Harrison asked Griffin and Valerie to remain behind. "How are you two managing the complexities of working together professionally while building a personal relationship?" he asked with paternal directness. Griffin and Valerie exchanged glances that communicated volumes about conversations they had been having privately. "We have established clear boundaries between business decisions and personal ones," Valerie answered. "When we are in professional settings, we focus entirely on what serves both companies best. Personal conversations happen outside the office, and it is working." Griffin smiled. "Better than either of us expected, actually. Having someone who understands both the business challenges and the personal stakes makes everything feel more manageable. Plus," Valerie added with a mischievous expression, "Griffin brings out my competitive side in the best possible way. I want to prove that partnering with Hayes Enterprises was brilliant business strategy, not just good matchmaking." Harrison laughed appreciatively. "And what about you, Griffin? Any concerns about the professional dynamics?" "Only that I want to make sure I earn my place in this partnership through performance, not through personal relationships. The merger needs to succeed because it creates value for both organizations." An excellent attitude. Harrison stood and walked to the window overlooking the manufacturing facilities where Valerie had worked during her leadership development program. "You know, watching you two work together reminds me of the early days when Margaret and I were building this company. The combination of personal and professional partnership can be incredibly powerful when both people are committed to something larger than themselves." Griffin felt moved by the comparison to Harrison's marriage and business partnership. "We are committed to making this work on every level, sir. I can see that. And I appreciate that you both understand the difference between building something together and simply combining existing assets." As the meeting concluded and they prepared to leave, Valerie lingered behind to speak privately with her father. "Dad, thank you for trusting my judgment about Griffin and about this merger. Your judgment has been excellent throughout your leadership development program, Valerie. This situation simply gave you an opportunity to apply everything you have learned. Do you think Mom would approve of how things turned out?" Harrison's expression softened. "Your mother always said that the best business decisions were the ones that honored both practical needs and personal values. I think she would be very proud of the choice you made and the man you chose to make it with." As Griffin and Valerie left Vance Industries together that afternoon, both of them felt the satisfaction that came from building something meaningful together. The professional partnership was exceeding everyone's expectations, but more importantly, their personal relationship continued to deepen as they discovered new aspects of each other's character and capabilities. "Dinner tonight?" Griffin asked as they reached their cars in the parking garage. "Actually," Valerie replied, with a smile that suggested she had something planned, "I was hoping you might be free for a different kind of evening." "What did you have in mind?" "How would you feel about delivering pizzas?" Griffin stared at her in surprise. "What?" "DeLuca's is short-staffed tonight, and I promised Mario I would help out. I thought it might be fun for you to see where this all started from my perspective." Griffin considered the proposal, then broke into a grin. "You know what? That sounds perfect. Though I should warn you, I have never delivered pizza before." "Do not worry," Valerie said, pulling him close for a quick kiss in the empty parking garage. "I will teach you everything you need to know. After all, it is where I learned some of my most important lessons about authentic leadership." As they drove toward DeLuca's family restaurant, Griffin reflected on how dramatically his life had changed since that desperate Tuesday evening when he needed a companion for Harrison Vance's gala. What had begun as a business transaction had evolved into a love story that was still being written, one authentic moment at a time. Tonight, he would learn to deliver pizza. Tomorrow, he would continue building a company that honored both his values and his employees' futures. And through it all, he would have Valerie beside him, not as the hired companion who had saved his business opportunity, but as the partner who had shown him what it meant to build something real together. 3 months into the merger, Griffin stood in what was now called the Hayes-Vance Strategic Center, watching his former employees collaborate seamlessly with their new colleagues on a project that would have been impossible for either company to handle alone. The integration had exceeded everyone's most optimistic projections, creating not just operational efficiencies, but genuine innovation born from combining different perspectives and expertise. The Morrison manufacturing expansion is ahead of schedule, Marcus reported, joining Griffin at the observation window that overlooked the bustling workspace below. Their productivity improvements are already showing measurable results, and they want to discuss additional consulting services for their Phoenix facility. Excellent news. Griffin felt the deep satisfaction that came from seeing theoretical business strategies translate into real-world success. What about the Henderson Family Restaurants project? Valerie's team completed the organizational assessment yesterday. They identified opportunities for cost savings that would not require any staff reductions. Actually, the efficiencies would allow them to hire additional people in their expanding locations. Griffin nodded approvingly. This was exactly the kind of outcome that validated the merger philosophy, growth that strengthened rather than diminished the human element of business. Have you seen Valerie this morning? Marcus smiled with the expression of someone who had watched two people fall in love while pretending it was purely professional. She is in the main conference room, preparing for the Hartwell Industries presentation. Griffin's expression darkened slightly at the mention of Hartwell Industries. The same company that had been trying to poach Hayes Enterprises employees before the merger was now aggressively pursuing several of their best clients, using tactics that bordered on unethical. Any updates on their latest moves? Unfortunately, yes. They approached 3 more of our clients this week with significantly underbid proposals. They are clearly trying to damage our reputation by making it appear that we have raised our prices since the merger. Griffin felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. In the consulting business, reputation was everything. If clients began to believe that Hayes-Vance charged premium prices without delivering premium value, the damage could be irreversible. What is Valerie's assessment of the situation? She thinks we should respond strategically rather than defensively, demonstrate our enhanced capabilities through exceptional project delivery rather than getting into a price war. Smart approach, though I worry about the short-term impact on client retention. Marcus studied Griffin's expression with the insight of someone who had worked closely with him for years. You know, sir, you have been carrying a heavier burden lately. The merger is successful, your relationship with Valerie is flourishing, the employees are happy, yet you seem more stressed than before. Griffin considered Marcus's observation. I suppose I feel the weight of representing not just Hayes Enterprises anymore, but the Vance family legacy as well. Harrison trusted me with something his family built over generations. Valerie chose to align her future with mine. The stakes feel larger. Have you talked to Valerie about these concerns? I do not want her to think I'm having second thoughts about our partnership, either professional or personal. Marcus raised an eyebrow. With respect, sir, that is exactly the kind of thinking that creates unnecessary problems. Valerie chose you because of your integrity and judgment. She would want to know if you are facing challenges. Before Griffin could respond, Valerie appeared in the doorway of his office, her professional attire crisp and her expression focused. Even after months of working together daily, Griffin felt the same flutter of attraction he had experienced that first night when she had walked into his world carrying pizza boxes and possibilities. Griffin, do you have a moment? I want to review the Hartwell strategy before the client presentations begin. Of course. Griffin gestured toward the comfortable seating area where they handled more collaborative discussions. Marcus was just updating me on their latest approaches to our clients. Valerie settled into her chair with the graceful efficiency that characterized all her movements. I think we have been looking at this situation too narrowly. Hartwell is not just trying to steal our clients. They are trying to force us into a defensive posture that makes us look reactive rather than innovative. What do you mean? Every time we respond to their pricing attacks, we reinforce the narrative that we are more expensive. Instead, we should be demonstrating why our integrated approach delivers results that justify premium investment. Griffin leaned forward, intrigued by her strategic thinking. How do you suggest we do that? By taking on a project that showcases everything Hayes Vance can accomplish that neither Hartwell nor any other firm could match. Something high-profile enough that success would establish our reputation definitively. Do you have a specific project in mind? Valerie's expression grew more animated. Actually, yes. Chicago Metropolitan Hospital has been struggling with operational efficiency issues that are affecting patient care. They need someone who can analyze their systems from both business and human perspectives, then implement changes that improve outcomes without disrupting the culture that makes their staff so dedicated. Griffin considered the proposal. Chicago Metropolitan was one of the city's most respected healthcare institutions, but also one of its most complex organizations. Success there would indeed establish Hayes Vance as capable of handling any challenge. That would be an enormous undertaking, the kind of project that could make or break our reputation. Exactly, and it plays to our unique strengths. My background in organizational behavior, your expertise in maintaining culture during change, Dad's connections in the healthcare industry, and our combined team's ability to analyze problems from multiple perspectives. What makes you think they would choose us over more established healthcare consultants? Valerie smiled with the confidence that had first attracted Griffin's attention. Because I already had a preliminary conversation with their board chair, and they are frustrated with traditional consulting approaches that treat hospitals like manufacturing plants. They want someone who understands that patient care depends on employee engagement, which depends on organizational culture. Griffin felt excitement building despite his concerns about the project's complexity. When would they need to see a proposal? Next Friday, which gives us exactly 1 week to develop the most comprehensive consulting proposal Hayes Vance has ever created. The challenge was daunting, but Griffin found himself energized by the possibility of proving what their partnership could accomplish. What kind of timeline are they looking at for implementation? 6 months for analysis and recommendations, 12 months for full implementation with measurable results. Griffin stood and walked to the window, looking out at the team that would need to commit enormous effort to make such an ambitious project successful. Valerie, if we take this on and fail, it could damage both companies' reputations permanently. And if we take it on and succeed, it establishes Hayes Vance as the premier organizational consulting firm in the Midwest. Griffin turned back to face her, noting the determined expression that reminded him so much of her father. You really believe we can pull this off? I believe we can accomplish anything when we work together. But more importantly, I believe this is exactly the kind of challenge that will prove to everyone, including ourselves, that our partnership was built on substance, not just sentiment. The deeper meaning of her words was not lost on Griffin. In the months since the merger, some industry observers had suggested that the Hayes-Vance partnership was more about personal relationships than business strategy. Success on a project of this magnitude would definitively answer those questions. "All right," Griffin said, feeling the familiar surge of determination that had driven him to build Hayes Enterprises from nothing. "Let us show Chicago Metropolitan Hospital, Hartwell Industries, and everyone else what authentic partnership can accomplish." Valerie stood and extended her hand for a firm handshake. "Partners! Partners!" Griffin agreed, feeling that the word encompassed far more than their professional relationship. As they began planning what would become the most important project of both their careers, neither of them realized that the challenges ahead would test not just their business capabilities, but the very foundation of everything they had built together. Success would require more than excellent consulting skills. It would require absolute trust, unwavering commitment, and the courage to risk everything they had created for the chance to build something even greater. The next week would determine whether Griffin Hayes and Valerie Bell Vance were truly meant to be partners in every sense of the word. The Hayes-Vance conference room at 7 o'clock on Thursday evening looked like the command center of a military operation. Whiteboards covered every wall, filled with organizational charts, process flow diagrams, and financial projections. Laptops occupied every seat at the large table, their screens displaying research documents, industry reports, and draft proposal sections. Coffee cups and takeout containers provided evidence of the 18-hour days the team had been working. Griffin stood at the head of the table, reviewing the comprehensive hospital assessment framework they had developed, while Valerie coordinated with team members who were still refining different aspects of their proposal. The atmosphere was intense, but energized. Everyone understood they were creating something unprecedented. "The staffing analysis is complete," reported Jennifer Walsh, Hayes-Vance's senior organizational consultant. "Chicago Metropolitan has excellent clinical staff, but their administrative processes create inefficiencies that force medical professionals to spend too much time on paperwork instead of patient care." "What kind of time savings are we projecting?" Griffin asked. "Conservative estimate is 20% reduction in administrative burden for nurses and physicians, which translates to either improved patient ratios or capacity for additional patients without hiring." Valerie looked up from her laptop, where she was integrating financial projections. "That aligns perfectly with their budget constraints. They need to improve efficiency without major capital expenditures." Marcus raised his hand from across the table. "I have concerns about implementation timeline. 6 months for analysis is ambitious, given the complexity of healthcare regulations." "Valid concern," Griffin acknowledged, "but that is exactly why this project will establish our reputation. Anyone can do easy consulting work. Delivering exceptional results under challenging timelines is what separates premium firms from everyone else." "Plus," Valerie added, "we have advantages other consulting firms lack. Dad's relationships in healthcare give us access to best practices from other hospital systems. My organizational behavior background helps us understand the human dynamics that make or break operational changes. And Griffin's experience maintaining culture during transitions ensures we do not accidentally damage what makes Chicago Metropolitan special." The team worked in focused silence for another hour, each person contributing expertise that strengthened their collective proposal. Griffin found himself marveling at how seamlessly former Hayes Enterprises employees collaborated with Vance Industries consultants, creating something neither group could have achieved alone. "Griffin," Valerie said quietly, approaching him during a brief break while others stepped out for fresh air, "I need to discuss something with you privately." Her tone suggested seriousness that went beyond project logistics. Griffin followed her to his office, noting the tension in her posture. "What is it?" Valerie closed the door and turned to face him. "I received a call from Richard Hartwell this afternoon. Griffin felt a chill of apprehension. Richard Hartwell, CEO of Hartwell Industries, was known for aggressive business tactics that often pushed ethical boundaries. What did he want? He offered me a position as Senior Vice President of Strategic Development at Hartwell Industries, significant salary increase, equity participation, and complete autonomy over a new family business consulting division. Griffin stared at her, processing the implications. He is trying to break up our partnership by recruiting you directly. That was my assessment as well. But Griffin, the offer was substantial, more than substantial. Are you considering it? Valerie's eyes flashed with something that might have been hurt. Do you think I would be considering it? I think you would be foolish not to consider any opportunity that advances your career, even if it meant leaving Hayes Vance, leaving you. The personal dimension of her question hung between them, highlighting how completely their professional and romantic relationships had become intertwined. Valerie, I would never want you to sacrifice your professional growth for personal reasons. If Hartwell Industries offers you opportunities that Hayes Vance cannot match, stop! Her voice was firm. Just stop right there. Griffin looked at her in surprise. Griffin Hayes, after everything we have built together, do you honestly think I would abandon our partnership for a bigger salary? Do you think I spent 4 years learning to value authentic relationships over financial rewards just to throw that away for Richard Hartwell's money? I think you should make decisions based on what is best for your future, not on what you think I want to hear. Valerie stepped closer, her green eyes intense with emotion. What is best for my future is continuing to build something meaningful with someone I respect, admire, and love. What is best for my future is proving that Hayes Vance can accomplish things that seemed impossible when we were separate companies. And if we fail, if the Chicago Metropolitan Project damages both our reputations, if Hartwell succeeds in undermining our client base, then we fail together, and we figure out how to rebuild together. But we do not give up, because success requires risk. Griffin felt something shift in his chest as he realized the depth of Valerie's commitment to their partnership. You really turned down Hartwell's offer. I really turned down Hartwell's offer. But more importantly, I'm disappointed that you thought I might accept it. Why? Because it suggests you still do not fully understand what we have created together. This is not just a business merger, Griffin. This is not just a romantic relationship. This is a partnership built on shared values, mutual respect, and common purpose. That is not something you abandon when someone offers you more money. Griffin reached out and took her hands, feeling the calluses she had earned during her leadership development program, alongside the soft skin that spoke to her privileged upbringing. You are right. I'm sorry for doubting your commitment to us. I need you to trust that I chose this partnership, chose you, for reasons that go far deeper than convenience or circumstance. I do trust that. But I also need you to understand that losing you would mean losing the best thing that has ever happened to me, both professionally and personally. Valerie's expression softened. You are not going to lose me, Griffin. But we do need to win this Chicago Metropolitan contract, not just to prove ourselves to the industry, but to prove to ourselves that we can handle whatever challenges come our way. Griffin pulled her closer, feeling the truth of her commitment in the way she melted into his embrace. Tomorrow, we present the proposal that could change everything, he said quietly. Tomorrow, we show them what authentic partnership can accomplish, Valerie corrected. And then we come home and continue building the life we want together. As they returned to the conference room, where their team was putting finishing touches on what would either be their greatest triumph or their most spectacular failure, Griffin felt a certainty he had not experienced since that desperate Tuesday evening when he had needed a companion for Harrison Vance's gala. Whatever tomorrow brought, he and Valerie would face it together. And that partnership, built on truth, strengthened by challenges, and sustained by genuine love, was worth any risk they might have to take. The Chicago Metropolitan Hospital proposal would determine their professional future. But their commitment to each other had already determined something far more important. They had found in each other the partner they had been searching for all their lives. Friday morning dawned crisp and clear, with the kind of Chicago autumn light that made the city's architecture look especially magnificent. Griffin and Valerie arrived at Chicago Metropolitan Hospital 45 minutes before their scheduled presentation, using the extra time to walk through the facility and observe the operational dynamics they had studied so intensively over the past week. The hospital buzzed with the controlled urgency that characterized excellent healthcare institutions. Staff members moved with purpose through corridors lined with patient rooms, their interactions reflecting both professional competence and genuine care. But even in their brief observation, Griffin and Valerie could see the inefficiencies their research had identified. Nurses spending too much time on documentation, physicians delayed by administrative processes, and support staff working around systems that seemed designed for bureaucracy rather than patient care. "Everything we projected is visible in real time," Valerie murmured, as they watched a nurse spend several minutes navigating multiple computer systems to update a single patient record. "The question is whether our solutions are as practical in implementation as they appear in theory," Griffin replied, adjusting his tie with the nervous energy that always preceded major presentations. They made their way to the executive conference room, where Chicago Metropolitan's leadership team was gathering. Dr. Patricia Williams, the chief medical officer, greeted them with the tired warmth of someone who genuinely wanted solutions but had been disappointed by consultants before. Board Chair Robert Chen offered firm handshakes and the assessing gaze of a businessman evaluating potential partners. "Before we begin, Dr. Williams said, as everyone settled around the conference table, "I want to be completely honest about our situation. We have worked with 3 different consulting firms over the past 2 years. Each promised dramatic improvements, delivered detailed reports, and left us with recommendations that sounded excellent in theory, but proved impossible to implement without disrupting patient care." "We appreciate your candor," Griffin responded. "May I ask what made those previous approaches unsuccessful?" "They treated our hospital like a manufacturing plant," replied James Morrison, the chief financial officer. "They focused on efficiency metrics, without understanding that healthcare depends on relationships between staff members, between caregivers and patients, between departments that must coordinate seamlessly to save lives." Valerie leaned forward slightly. "That is exactly why we believe Hayes Vance offers a different approach. Our analysis begins with understanding your organizational culture and the human dynamics that make Chicago Metropolitan successful, then identifies improvements that strengthen rather than disrupt those foundations." "Show us," Dr. Williams said simply. Griffin stood and moved to the presentation screen, but instead of beginning with typical consulting slides, he displayed a photograph of Chicago Metropolitan's main lobby during morning shift change. "This image captures what makes your hospital special," he began. "Watch how your staff interact during the busiest time of day." The photograph showed nurses greeting each other warmly, physicians stopping to check on colleagues, and administrators moving through the space with obvious familiarity and comfort. Even in a still image, the culture of mutual support was evident. "Most consulting firms would see inefficiency in these interactions," Valerie continued, standing to join Griffin at the front of the room. "We see the foundation of excellent patient care. Your staff work well together because they genuinely care about each other. Our recommendations build on that strength rather than undermining it." For the next hour, Griffin and Valerie presented their comprehensive analysis with a level of detail that clearly impressed the hospital leadership. But more importantly, they demonstrated understanding of healthcare culture that previous consultants had missed. "Your staffing challenges are not about having too many employees," Griffin explained, displaying workforce analysis charts. "You have exactly the right number of clinical staff. The problem is that administrative inefficiencies force your most skilled people to spend time on tasks that could be streamlined or eliminated. For example," Valerie added, "nurses currently spend an average of 90 minutes per shift on documentation that requires entering the same information into multiple systems. We have identified technology solutions that would reduce that to 20 minutes while actually improving record accuracy." Dr. Williams looked intrigued. "What kind of technology solutions?" "Integrated systems that allow single data entry to update all relevant records automatically, combined with voice recognition software that lets staff update patient information while providing care rather than afterwards. The cost savings from administrative efficiency improvements would pay for the technology upgrades within 18 months, Griffin continued, while freeing your clinical staff to spend more time on direct patient care. A board chair, Chen, studied their financial projections carefully. "These numbers look almost too good to be true. What makes you confident they are achievable?" Valerie smiled with the confidence that had first attracted Griffin's attention. "Because we have implemented similar improvements at manufacturing facilities and service organizations. The principles of organizational efficiency are universal. The key is adapting them to healthcare's unique requirements. Plus," Griffin added, "we are not proposing theoretical changes. Every recommendation in our proposal has been tested successfully in similar healthcare environments. We can provide references from 3 hospital systems where comparable improvements were achieved." The presentation continued for another hour, covering everything from staff scheduling optimization to patient flow improvements to cost reduction strategies that required no reduction in personnel. By the time they concluded, the hospital leadership was asking detailed implementation questions rather than expressing skepticism about feasibility. "I have one final question, Dr. Williams said as the formal presentation ended. "What happens if you do not achieve the results you are promising?" Griffin and Valerie exchanged glances, having anticipated this crucial question. "We guarantee measurable improvements within 6 months, or we refund 50% of our fee," Griffin answered. "And we guarantee full implementation success within 12 months, or we continue working at no additional charge until targets are met." "That is unusually confident," CFO Morrison observed. "We believe in taking responsibility for results, not just delivering reports," Valerie replied. "Hayes Vance succeeds only when our clients succeed." Board Chair Chen stood, indicating the presentation portion of their meeting was concluding. "We will discuss your proposal with the full board this afternoon and have a decision by Monday morning." As Griffin and Valerie gathered their materials, Dr. Williams approached them privately. "I want you to know that this is the first consulting proposal I have seen that actually understands what we do here," she said quietly. "Whether we choose Hayes Vance or not, thank you for taking the time to really learn about our challenges." "Thank you for giving us that opportunity," Valerie replied sincerely. As they left Chicago Metropolitan Hospital, both Griffin and Valerie felt the mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration that followed high-stakes presentations. They had given everything they had to offer, demonstrated their capabilities at the highest level, and shown exactly what Hayes Vance could accomplish when their combined expertise was focused on a worthy challenge. "How do you think we did?" Griffin asked as they walked toward their car. "I think we showed them something they have never seen before," Valerie replied. Whether that is enough depends on how much they trust us to deliver on our promises. And if they say no, Valerie stopped walking and turned to face him, then we find another way to prove what we can accomplish together. But Griffin, regardless of what happens with this contract, I want you to know that presenting with you today felt like the most natural thing in the world. What do you mean? I mean that we think together, we problem solve together, we present ideas together as if we have been partners for years instead of months. That is not something you can teach or learn. It is something you either have or you do not. Griffin felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with professional success and everything to do with the woman standing beside him. We do work well together, he agreed. We do everything well together, Valerie corrected with a smile that made Griffin forget all about consulting contracts and business development. As they drove back to Hayes Vance headquarters, both of them knew that Monday morning would bring either triumph or disappointment. But they also knew that whatever the decision, they had proven something far more important than their ability to win a consulting contract. They had proven that their partnership, personal and professional, was built to last. Monday morning arrived with an unseasonably warm October breeze that rustled the trees surrounding the Hayes Vance offices. Griffin had been awake since 4:30, unable to sleep as his mind cycled through every aspect of Friday's presentation. By 6 o'clock, he had given up on rest and driven to the office, where he now sat reviewing quarterly reports while waiting for Chicago Metropolitan's decision. The early morning quiet was broken by the sound of footsteps in the corridor. Griffin looked up to see Valerie approaching with 2 coffee cups and a small paper bag that smelled like fresh pastries. "I figured you would be here early," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "Blueberry muffins from that bakery near your apartment. You know me too well." Griffin accepted the coffee gratefully, noting how Valerie's presence immediately made the morning feel more manageable. "Any word yet?" "Board Chair Chen said they would call by 10 o'clock. It is currently 7:15. Valerie checked her phone. 2 hours and 45 minutes. Want to review the Henderson Restaurant's presentation while we wait? For the next 2 hours, they worked with the focused collaboration that had become natural to both of them. Even with the Chicago Metropolitan decision looming, they found satisfaction in solving problems for clients who trusted Hayes Vance with their businesses and their employees' futures. At exactly 10 o'clock, Griffin's phone rang with a number he recognized immediately. Griffin Hayes. "Mr. Hayes, this is Robert Chen from Chicago Metropolitan Hospital. Is Miss Belle Vance available to join this conversation?" "She is right here." "Let me put you on speaker." Griffin activated the speakerphone and gestured for Valerie to move closer. Her hand found his automatically, their fingers intertwining as they prepared to hear their fate. "Mr. Hayes, Miss Belle Vance, I am calling with the board's decision regarding your consulting proposal." The pause that followed felt endless. "We would like to move forward with Hayes Vance as our organizational development partner." Griffin felt Valerie's hand squeeze his as relief and excitement flooded through both of them simultaneously. "That is wonderful news, Mr. Chen," Valerie managed to say, with professional composure despite the joy evident in her voice. "We are honored by your confidence. The board was impressed not just by your analysis and recommendations, but by your obvious understanding of healthcare culture. Dr. Williams said your presentation was the first time consultants had talked about improving efficiency while strengthening patient care relationships." "When would you like us to begin?" Griffin asked. "As soon as possible. We are hoping to have initial assessments completed before the holiday season, with implementation beginning in January." They spent the next 20 minutes discussing project timelines, team assignments, and communication protocols. When the call ended, Griffin and Valerie sat in silence for a moment, processing the magnitude of what they had just achieved. "We did it," Valerie said quietly. "We did it," Griffin agreed. Then they were both standing, embracing with the fierce joy of partners who had risked everything on a shared vision and seen that vision validated by the most demanding possible test. "This changes everything," Griffin said, holding her close. "For Hayes Vance, for our reputation, for our future." "It proves everything," Valerie corrected. "It proves that what we built together is real, sustainable, and capable of accomplishing things neither of us could have achieved alone." They were interrupted by Marcus knocking on the office doorframe. "I take it the news was good?" he asked with a knowing smile. "The news was excellent," Griffin replied. "Chicago Metropolitan Hospital just became our largest client, and Hayes Vance just became the consulting firm that other firms will be trying to emulate." Marcus's grin widened. "The team is going to be thrilled. This project will give everyone opportunities to work on challenges they never imagined tackling." As word spread through the Hayes Vance offices, Griffin and Valerie found themselves surrounded by colleagues who understood the significance of what they had accomplished. This was not just a business victory, it was validation of everything they had worked to build together. Later that afternoon, as the celebration settled into focused project planning, Griffin found himself alone with Valerie in the conference room where they would be coordinating the Chicago Metropolitan implementation. "Valerie, I need to tell you something." She looked up from the project timeline she was developing. "What is it? When Richard Hartwell tried to recruit you last week, and you asked if I thought you would consider his offer." "Griffin, we already discussed that. Please, let me finish. The reason I suggested you might consider it was not because I doubted your commitment to Hayes Vance. It was because I was terrified that I had become so dependent on you that I could not imagine succeeding without you." Valerie set down her pen and gave him her complete attention. "I was afraid that needing you professionally meant I was not strong enough to be your equal partner personally. And now," Griffin moved around the table to sit beside her, "now I understand that needing each other is not weakness. It is what makes partnership powerful. We are not successful despite depending on each other. We are successful because we choose to build something together that neither of us could create alone." Valerie's eyes softened with understanding. "Griffin Hayes, are you finally ready to admit that we are better together than we are separately?" "I am ready to admit that you are the best thing that ever happened to me, professionally and personally. I am ready to admit that I love you, not just for who you are, but for who I become when I am with you. And I love you for seeing potential in a pizza delivery driver who turned out to be more complicated than advertised." Griffin laughed, remembering that first desperate Tuesday evening that had changed both their lives. "I love you for being exactly who you said you were, even when you were pretending to be someone else. What happens now?" Griffin stood and walked to the window overlooking the workspace where Hayes Vance employees were already beginning preliminary research for the Chicago Metropolitan Project. "Now we prove that winning this contract was just the beginning. We build Hayes Vance into the kind of company your father envisioned when he agreed to this merger. We create opportunities for our employees that they never imagined possible. And personally," Griffin turned back to her with an expression that made Valerie's breath catch, "personally, we figure out how to balance building a business empire with building a life together. I have some ideas about that. Such as," Valerie stood and moved to join him at the window, "such as recognizing that our personal partnership is what makes our professional partnership possible. Such as understanding that loving each other does not complicate our business relationship. It strengthens it." Griffin put his arm around her, looking out at the team that would help them transform Chicago Metropolitan Hospital's operations while building Hayes Vance's reputation as the premier consulting firm in the Midwest. "You know what I realized during the presentation on Friday," he said. "What?" "That I was not nervous about whether we would win the contract. I was nervous about whether we deserved to win it, and watching you present, seeing how perfectly we complemented each other's expertise, I realized that we do deserve success because we are willing to work for it together." "Together," Valerie agreed, leaning into his embrace. "Always together." As Chicago's afternoon light streamed through the conference room windows, Griffin and Valerie began planning not just the project that would establish their professional reputation, but the future they would build as partners in every sense of the word. 6 months later, they would stand in this same conference room, celebrating the successful completion of the Chicago Metropolitan Project and the announcement of their engagement. But the seeds of that future were planted in this moment, when two people who had found each other through a desperate business arrangement chose to trust that their partnership was strong enough to support whatever dreams they dared to build together. The best partnerships, they were learning, were not just about complementing each other's strengths. They were about having the courage to envision a future that neither person could achieve alone, then working together to make that vision reality. And that was exactly what Griffin Hayes and Valerie Vance intended to do. 6 months later, the main auditorium at Chicago Metropolitan Hospital overflowed with healthcare professionals, business leaders, and journalists who had come to witness something unprecedented in the consulting industry. The Hayes Vance team had not only achieved every improvement target they had promised, but exceeded them by margins that transformed Chicago Metropolitan from a struggling institution into a model of operational excellence. Griffin stood at the podium, looking out at an audience that included Harrison Vance, Marcus Chen, and dozens of Hayes Vance employees who had contributed to what was being called the most successful healthcare consulting project in the region's history. "When we began this partnership 6 months ago," Griffin said, his voice carrying clearly through the packed auditorium, "Chicago Metropolitan Hospital faced challenges that seemed almost insurmountable. Administrative inefficiencies were affecting patient care, staff morale was declining, and financial pressures threatened the hospital's ability to serve its community." He gestured toward the large screen displaying before and after metrics that told a remarkable story of transformation. Today, patient satisfaction scores have increased by 37%. Staff engagement surveys show the highest levels of job satisfaction in the hospital's history. Administrative efficiency improvements have created cost savings that allowed Chicago Metropolitan to hire 42 additional nurses and expand their community outreach programs. The applause was thunderous, but Griffin's attention was focused on Valerie, who sat in the front row wearing an expression of pride that had nothing to do with professional achievement and everything to do with personal joy. "But these numbers, impressive as they are, do not capture the most important outcome of this project," Griffin continued. "What we have proven is that authentic partnership between consultants and clients, between different departments within an organization, between people who choose to trust each other completely, can accomplish things that seemed impossible." Dr. Patricia Williams joined Griffin at the podium, her demeanor transformed from the exhausted skepticism she had shown during their first meeting to genuine enthusiasm. "I have worked in healthcare for 28 years, she said, "and I have never seen consultants who understood so completely that our success depends on relationships between human beings. Hayes Vance did not just improve our systems, they strengthened our culture." As the formal presentation concluded and guests moved toward the reception area, Griffin found himself surrounded by hospital administrators, business leaders, and potential clients who wanted to understand how Hayes Vance had achieved such remarkable results. The key, he explained to a group of executives from other healthcare systems, was recognizing that organizational efficiency and human relationships are not competing priorities. When you strengthen one, you strengthen both. Across the room, Valerie was engaged in similar conversations, her expertise in organizational behavior attracting interest from companies far beyond the healthcare industry. Griffin watched her with the same admiration he had felt that first night, when she had demonstrated social skills that left him amazed. "She is remarkable," Harrison Vance said, joining Griffin near the refreshment table. "She is extraordinary," Griffin agreed. "This project would not have been possible without her insights into organizational culture. I am not talking about her professional capabilities, though those are certainly impressive. I am talking about how happy she looks when she is working with you." Griffin turned to study Harrison's expression, noting the paternal satisfaction in the older man's eyes. "Harrison, I want you to know that I understand how much you trusted me when you agreed to this merger. Your daughter chose to align her future with mine, and I do not take that responsibility lightly." "Griffin, the merger was successful because you and Valerie were already partners in every way that mattered. The business arrangement simply formalized what anyone could see was inevitable." "What do you mean?" Harrison smiled with the wisdom of someone who had built both a business empire and a successful marriage. "I mean that authentic partnerships are rare in business and even rarer in life. When you find someone who makes you more capable, more confident, and more committed to excellence, you do not let practical considerations prevent you from building something together." Before Griffin could respond, Valerie appeared at his side, her cheeks flushed with excitement from conversations with potential clients. "Griffin, we have serious interest from 4 different hospital systems, 2 manufacturing companies, and a university that wants to discuss organizational development for their administrative departments." "That is incredible news." "The best news," she continued, her eyes sparkling with an emotion that went beyond professional success, "is that they all specifically requested to work with our team. Not Hayes Vance as a firm, but you and me working together." Harrison chuckled appreciatively. "I believe that is what we call market validation." "What we call it," Griffin said, taking Valerie's hand, "is proof that what we built together is worth everything we invested in it." The reception continued for another hour, with Hayes Vance team members receiving recognition for their contributions to the project's success. Marcus was offered a promotion to Senior Project Manager. Jennifer Walsh was invited to speak at a national healthcare conference. Every person who had contributed to the Chicago metropolitan transformation found their professional reputation enhanced by association with the project's success. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Griffin and Valerie found themselves alone in the hospital conference room where they had first presented their proposal 6 months earlier. "Do you remember how nervous we were in this room?" Valerie asked, settling into the same chair she had occupied during their presentation. "I remember thinking that everything we had built together was riding on 60 minutes of presenting our ideas to people who had been disappointed by consultants before. And now," Griffin looked around the room where their professional partnership had been tested and validated at the highest level. "Now I think this room represents something even more important than a successful project." "What?" "It represents the moment we proved to ourselves that we could handle anything as long as we faced it together." Valerie stood and moved to the window overlooking the hospital parking lot, where Chicago metropolitan staff were ending their shifts and beginning their commutes home to families who benefited from the improved workplace culture Hayes Vance had helped create. "Griffin, I have something I want to discuss with you." Her tone suggested significance beyond business planning. Griffin joined her at the window, noting the way the evening light highlighted the auburn in her hair. "What is it?" Today's success was incredible, but it also made me realize something important about what I want our future to look like. "What kind of future?" Valerie turned to face him directly, her green eyes holding the same determination he had seen the night she had agreed to help him impress her father. "The kind of future where we are not just business partners who happen to be romantically involved, but life partners who happen to run a consulting firm together." Griffin felt his heart skip as he processed the implications of her words. "Valerie, I am saying that I want to marry you, Griffin Hayes. I want to build a family with you, raise children who understand that authentic success comes from serving others, and create a legacy that honors both business excellence and human values." The proposal, for that was clearly what it was, took Griffin's breath away with its perfect combination of personal commitment and shared vision. "Are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking you to choose a future where we face every challenge together, celebrate every success together, and build something that lasts longer than either of our individual careers." Griffin reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small velvet box that he had been carrying for 2 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. "Funny you should mention that," he said, opening the box to reveal a diamond ring that caught the conference room lights like captured starlight. "Because I was about to ask you the same question." Valerie's eyes widened with surprise and joy as Griffin dropped to one knee in the same conference room where they had first proven their professional partnership. "Valerie Elizabeth Bell Vance, you have been my partner, my inspiration, and my greatest blessing. Will you marry me and spend the rest of your life building extraordinary things together?" "Yes," she said, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." As Griffin slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to embrace the woman who had transformed his life in every possible way, both of them knew that this moment represented not an ending, but a beginning. They had proven that they could build a successful business together. They had demonstrated that their professional partnership could survive any challenge. Now they were ready to discover what they could accomplish as life partners committed to creating something even more meaningful than business success. Outside the conference room windows, Chicago Metropolitan Hospital continued its mission of healing and service, made more effective by the partnership between two people who had learned that the most extraordinary achievements come from choosing to trust completely in the power of authentic love. Their story had begun with a desperate business arrangement and a pizza delivery that changed everything. It would continue with a marriage built on shared values, mutual respect, and the unshakable belief that together they could accomplish anything they dared to dream. 2 years later, on a perfect October evening that reminded both Griffin and Valerie of the night they had first met, Hayes Vance Strategic Partners celebrated the grand opening of their new headquarters in downtown Chicago. The sleek building housed not just their expanding consulting practice, but also the Hayes Vance Foundation, dedicated to supporting entrepreneurship education and leadership development programs for young professionals. Griffin stood on the building's rooftop terrace, looking out at the city skyline, while guests mingled in the elegant reception space below. The past 2 years had exceeded every dream he had dared to envision. Hayes Vance had become the most sought-after consulting firm in the Midwest. Their client list included Fortune 500 companies and respected non-profits, and their employee satisfaction ratings ranked among the highest in the industry. "Enjoying the view?" Valerie asked, joining him at the terrace railing. Even after 2 years of marriage, Griffin still felt his breath catch when he looked at his wife. Tonight she wore a midnight blue dress that complemented her auburn hair, and her wedding ring caught the city lights like a promise of all the tomorrows they would share. "Enjoying the company," he replied, pulling her close. though the view is pretty spectacular too. Below them, the reception buzzed with conversations between clients, employees, community leaders, and family members who had come to celebrate Hayes Vance's continued growth. Harrison Vance was deep in discussion with the mayor about economic development initiatives. Marcus Chen was showing potential recruits around the building's innovative workspace design. Jennifer Walsh was accepting congratulations on her recent promotion to Vice President of Healthcare Services. "Any regrets?" Valerie asked, following Griffin's gaze across the thriving scene below. "About what?" "About agreeing to help a pizza delivery driver attend a business gala 2 years ago." Griffin laughed, remembering his desperation that Tuesday evening when he had needed a companion for what seemed like the most important business opportunity of his life. "My only regret is that it took me so long to realize that the pizza delivery driver was the most important business opportunity of my life, even though she turned out to be more complicated than advertised. Especially because she turned out to be more complicated than advertised." Griffin turned to face Valerie directly. "You challenged me to become a better leader, a better partner, and a better man. The complications were all worth it." "Good answer." Valerie smiled with the expression that still made Griffin feel like the luckiest man alive. "Because I have news that might complicate things even more." "What kind of news?" Valerie's smile widened as she placed Griffin's hand over her still flat stomach. "The kind of news that means Hayes Vance Strategic Partners is about to become a family business in the most literal sense." Griffin stared at her for a moment, processing the magnitude of what she was telling him. "Are you saying—" "I am saying that in about 7 months, we are going to have a junior partner who will need to learn everything we know about building something meaningful together." Joy flooded through Griffin with an intensity that surprised him. He had known he wanted children with Valerie, but he had not anticipated how powerful it would feel to learn that their abstract future plans were becoming concrete reality. "We are going to be parents. We are going to be parents who run a consulting firm, support a foundation, and somehow manage to raise a child who understands that authentic success comes from serving others." Griffin lifted Valerie off her feet, spinning her around on the rooftop terrace while the sounds of celebration drifted up from the reception below. "This is the best news ever," he said, setting her down but keeping her close in his arms. "Even though it means reorganizing our work schedules, modifying our travel plans, and figuring out how to balance client demands with diaper changes. Especially because it means all of those things. We have proven we can handle any challenge as long as we face it together." Valerie reached up to touch Griffin's face with the gentle intimacy of a woman who had chosen to build her life with this man. "Griffin Hayes, 2 years ago, you hired me to help you make a good impression at a business gala. Did you ever imagine it would lead to this?" Griffin looked around at the building that housed their thriving company, the terrace where they were planning their family's future, and the city that had witnessed their transformation from strangers to partners to husband and wife. "I hired you because I was desperate and you were available," he said honestly. "I had no idea that you would become my partner in every sense of the word, or that together we would build something more meaningful than either of us could have accomplished alone. And now we get to teach our child everything we have learned about authentic partnership, starting with the most important lesson, that the best partnerships are built on truth, sustained by trust, and strengthened by challenges that force you to become better than you thought possible." As they prepared to rejoin their guests and share the news of their expanding family, Griffin and Valerie paused for one more moment alone on the terrace, looking out at the city where their story had begun with a pizza delivery and evolved into a love story that would continue for generations. "Ready to go tell everyone that Hayes Vance Strategic Partners is about to become even more strategic?" Valerie asked. ready to celebrate everything we have built and everything we are still building, Griffin replied. Hand in hand, they walked back toward the reception where friends, family, employees, and clients were gathered to honor not just a successful business, but a partnership that had proven the power of choosing to trust completely in love, integrity, and the courage to build something extraordinary together. Their child would grow up in a world shaped by parents who had learned that the most important business decisions are often matters of the heart, that authentic success requires authentic relationships, and that sometimes the most extraordinary life begins with the most ordinary moment. A pizza delivery on a Tuesday evening when someone was brave enough to ask for help and someone else was generous enough to say yes. The Hayes-Vance legacy would continue, built on the unshakable foundation of two people who had discovered that the best partnerships, in business and in life, happen when you choose to see potential rather than obstacles, possibilities rather than problems, and forever rather than just for now. As Chicago city lights twinkled below them like scattered diamonds, Griffin and Valerie Hayes-Vance looked toward a future bright with promise, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges or opportunities lay ahead, they would face them exactly as they had faced everything else, together, with integrity and with absolute faith in the power of authentic love to create miracles. Their story had begun with a simple question: do you have a moment to talk privately? It would continue with a lifetime of moments shared privately and publicly, professionally and personally, through challenges that would test them and successes that would inspire them, always grounded in the truth they had discovered together, that the most extraordinary achievements come from the courage to trust completely in each other. And that was exactly what they intended to do, for all the years and all the adventures that lay ahead. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.